Before we step inside these walls, hit subscribe. Because some prisons don't just hold criminals, they hold the last secrets people tried to take to the grave. The rain hit the stone walls of Sing Sing like fingers tapping on a coffin. It was just after midnight when Officer Rachel Monroe received the call. Death row. Cell 12. Unresponsive inmate. She grabbed her coat and moved fast through the old corridors of Sing Sing Correctional Facility, where every footstep echoed like history, refusing to stay buried. Sing Sing was older than fear itself. Built in 1826, it had watched generations of men arrive in chains and leave in silence. Some walked out free. Others passed through the infamous death chamber, Old Sparky, the electric chair that made the prison's name feared across America. Even after executions ended, the building still carried that weight. Rachel had worked there for 9 years. She trusted routine. Routine kept prisons from becoming chaos. But tonight, routine was already dead. She reached cell 12. 2 guards stood outside, both unusually quiet. Inside, inmate Victor Kane sat on the edge of his bunk. Alive. Very much alive. Rachel frowned. Dispatch said unresponsive. 1 guard swallowed. He was. For about 3 minutes. Victor looked up slowly. 58 years old. Former organized crime accountant. Convicted for conspiracy, corruption, and the disappearance of 3 federal witnesses in the late 1990s. A man who never touched violence himself, but somehow always stood near it. He was supposed to die in prison. Instead, he smiled like he had just been handed more time. Rachel stepped closer. What happened? Victor's voice was calm. I had a visitor. Rachel looked at the locked bars. At midnight. Victor nodded. He told me I was already dead. The younger guard shifted nervously. Rachel ignored him. Who visited you? Victor leaned forward. That depends. Do you want the official lie or the truth? Rachel had heard inmates play games before. Fear made people invent stories. But something in Victor's eyes felt wrong. Not panic. Recognition. As if he had been waiting for this moment. She said nothing. Victor smiled faintly. Good. You're smarter than the last investigator. Rachel froze. What investigator? Victor's smile disappeared. Exactly. 3 weeks earlier, Detective Michael Reeves from the New York State Inspector General's office had arrived at Sing Sing asking questions nobody liked. He wasn't investigating an escape. Not contraband. Not gang violence. He was investigating records. Old execution records. Old transfer files. Old names buried in paper and dust. Men officially listed as executed, whose bodies were never documented. It sounded impossible. But Reeves wasn't the kind of man who chased ghosts. He chased paperwork. And paperwork lied differently than people did. Rachel remembered the first time she met him. He stood in the archive room, holding a faded prison ledger. You ever read these? He asked. She laughed. I work here. I try not to take the ghosts home. He slid the book toward her. A name circled in red ink. Anthony DeLuca. Executed. March 14, 1957. But beside it, handwritten in smaller letters. Transferred prior. Rachel frowned. That doesn't make sense. Reeves nodded. Exactly. There were 7 more like it. Men listed as dead, but transferred somewhere else first. No destination. No signatures. Just vanished. She asked the obvious question. Why would anyone fake an execution? Reeves looked at the old walls around them. To make someone disappear permanently. That sentence had followed her ever since. Because prisons were perfect places for disappearance. No one asked too many questions once a man was declared dead. Now Reeves was missing. Officially, he had taken leave. Unofficially, no one believed that. His desk at the Inspector General's office remained untouched. Coffee cup still there. Files gone. Phone disconnected. Like someone had erased him carefully. Rachel didn't trust careful. Careful meant practiced. And Victor Kane clearly knew something. Back in cell 12, she crossed her arms. You mentioned the last investigator. Victor nodded. He asked the wrong people the right questions. Where is he? Victor looked toward the corridor. Somewhere they put people when truth becomes expensive. Rachel's patience thinned. This isn't a movie, Kane. No, he said quietly. Movies have endings. That shut the room down. He stood and walked to the bars. Rain shadows moved across his face. Detective Reeves found something in the old death chamber basement. Something connected to executions that never happened. Rachel stared. The basement is sealed. Victor gave her a look. So was I. Before she could push further, Warden Thomas Hale appeared at the end of the corridor. Tall, controlled, the kind of man who made silence feel like policy. Officer Monroe. Rachel stepped back. Sir. His eyes moved from her to Victor. Too carefully. Leave us. Victor smiled again. That bothered her more than anything. She hesitated. Warden Hale's voice hardened. That was not a suggestion. Rachel walked away, but halfway down the corridor, she stopped. She looked back. The warden stood outside Victor's cell, speaking too quietly to hear. Victor listened. Then he said one sentence loud enough to reach her. You should have buried it deeper. Rachel's blood ran cold. Because Warden Hale didn't look angry. He looked afraid. That night, Rachel broke protocol. She went to the old execution wing alone. The death chamber had been shut down for decades. Most officers avoided it. Too many stories. Too much history. Too much silence. The basement door sat behind rusted gates and forgotten records. Officially condemned. Unofficially locked with a new padlock. That was enough for her. Someone was still using it. She borrowed keys from maintenance and opened the door. The air below smelled like old paper and wet stone. Her flashlight cut through darkness. Dust. Storage boxes. Old execution equipment covered in plastic sheets like sleeping ghosts. Then, a desk. Modern. Clean. Used recently. Laptop gone. Coffee fresh enough to smell. Detective Reeves had been here. She searched fast. Folders. Transfer lists. Old inmate files. Photographs. And one black and white image that made her stop. 8 men standing beside the old electric chair room. One of them was Anthony DeLuca, the inmate officially executed in 1957. Another looked painfully familiar. Rachel leaned closer. Impossible. It was a younger version of Warden Thomas Hale's father, former Deputy Warden Richard Hale. Connected. Family connected. This wasn't history. It was inheritance. Then she heard footsteps upstairs. Slow. Deliberate. Someone knew she was down here. Rachel grabbed the photo and killed her flashlight. Darkness swallowed the room. The basement door creaked open. A voice drifted down. Calm. Male. Certain. You're asking the same questions Reeves asked. Not Warden Hale. Different voice. Older. Closer. Rachel backed toward the wall, heart pounding. The footsteps came down the stairs. One by one. And then the stranger said the words that changed everything. He's still alive. And if they know you found that photo, you'll be next. Rachel Monroe pressed herself against the cold stone wall of the basement, barely breathing. The footsteps kept coming. Slow. Measured. The kind of steps made by someone who knew exactly where they were going. Her flashlight was off. The darkness around the old death chamber felt alive, heavy with dust, secrets, and decades of silence. She tightened her grip on the black and white photograph. 8 men. 1 false execution. 1 family tied to it. And now 1 warning. He's still alive. The stranger reached the bottom of the stairs. A small beam of light from his flashlight swept across the room, passing over old equipment covered in plastic and stopping just short of Rachel's shoes. She prepared herself. If this was the end, she wanted to see who had been hiding in the dark. Then the man spoke again. Officer Monroe, if I wanted you dead, I wouldn't have announced myself. Rachel froze. He knew her name. Slowly, she stepped forward. The light revealed an older man in his late 60s, gray coat, tired eyes, and the posture of someone who had spent years carrying guilt. He looked like a retired professor, not a threat, which made him more dangerous. Who are you? She asked. He lowered the flashlight. My name is Harold Bennett. I used to work here. Doing what? He gave a bitter smile, making sure history stayed buried. Rachel stared. He nodded toward the photo in her hand. You found Richard Hale, Warden Hale's father. Yes. And Anthony DeLuca? Bennett's face darkened. He was never executed. The silence after that felt louder than the prison above them. Rachel stepped closer. Then where did he go? Bennett answered carefully. To a place where powerful men sent people they needed erased without paperwork. She felt the floor shift beneath her. Not literally. Worse. Mentally. Because suddenly every prison story she had dismissed as paranoia felt possible. Victor Kane. Detective Reeves. Fake execution records. It all connected. Tell me everything. Bennett looked toward the stairs. We don't have long. In 1957, Anthony DeLuca was supposed to die in Sing Sing's electric chair. Official record. Execution carried out. Case closed. But DeLuca wasn't just another inmate. He had been an accountant for one of New York's most powerful organized crime networks, and more importantly, he kept records. Names, payments, judges, politicians, police, people who built careers on clean public images and dirty private deals. If he talked, entire systems would collapse. So instead of execution, a deal was made. Deputy Warden Richard Hale arranged a false death. DeLuca disappeared. The records were altered. Witnesses were controlled. And Sing Sing became the perfect grave for a man who never actually died. Rachel listened in stunned silence. Where did they take him? Bennett shook his head. No one knew. Only a few men handled transfers. I was a records clerk. I changed files. I told myself I was just following orders. He looked older, saying it. But you never forget the names you erase. She asked the question that mattered now. What does this have to do with Detective Reeves? Bennett's expression turned grim. He found proof that DeLuca may still have living connections. Hidden accounts. Property transfers. Someone kept the operation alive. Rachel understood. Someone in the Hale family. He didn't answer directly, which was answer enough. And Reeves? Bennett exhaled. He got too close. Above them, Sing Sing remained quiet. But Rachel could feel the danger rising. If Reeves had been silenced, she was already late. She pulled out her phone. No signal. Of course. The basement was a dead zone. She looked at Bennett. Why tell me now? He gave a sad smile. Because I'm dying. And men like me spend too many years thinking silence is survival. He stepped closer. Listen carefully. Reeves left something in the chapel. The chapel. Old stone wall. Behind the confession room. Loose brick. Rachel frowned. That sounds insane. Bennett smiled without humor. You work in a prison built before electricity. Insane is standard architecture. Before she could respond, footsteps echoed above again. This time faster. More than one person. Bennett's face changed. Too late. Rachel's pulse spiked. Who? He whispered one name. Hale. They barely reached the stairs before Warden Thomas Hale appeared at the top. Two correction officers stood behind him. Not officers Rachel trusted. The kind who followed loyalty, not law. Hale looked down at her calmly. No surprise. Only disappointment. Officer Monroe, he said. You've made this unnecessarily difficult. Rachel stepped in front of Bennett. Detective Reeves. Where is he? Hale's expression never moved. You're asking dangerous questions. Because they have dangerous answers. He descended one step. My father spent his life protecting this institution. Rachel laughed once. No, he protected criminals. For the first time, anger flashed across his face. You think history is clean? You think prisons run on justice? They run on decisions. Ugly decisions. Necessary decisions. Bennett spoke from behind her. You kept telling yourself that for years. Hale looked at him with open contempt. You should have stayed gone. Rachel saw it then. This wasn't just corruption. It was inheritance. Father to son. Secret to secret. Generation after generation. She held up the photograph. This is enough. Hale shook his head. No, it's not. One of the officers moved forward. Rachel backed up instinctively. No weapons. No backup. Only truth. And truth didn't stop bullets. Then Bennett did something unexpected. He stepped around her. I signed the records, he said. I'll testify. Hale stared. You won't live long enough. Bennett smiled sadly. That was always the deal, wasn't it? The older man suddenly shoved a heavy storage cart sideways. It slammed into the officers. Chaos. Rachel ran. Bennett shouted behind her. Go to the chapel. She hesitated. Gun drawn. Officers yelling. Hale shouting her name. There was no time. She ran up the stairs, through the execution wing, into the storm above. Rain hit like ice. Sing Sing's old walls loomed around her like witnesses refusing to speak. She sprinted toward the prison chapel. Ancient stone. Stained glass. The last place anyone expected truth to be hidden. She pushed inside, soaked and shaking. Silence. Candles. Wooden benches. The confession room at the back. She found the loose brick behind it exactly where Bennett said. Inside, a flash drive. And a handwritten note from Detective Michael Reeves. Only 6 words. Trust no one in uniform. Rachel's breath caught. Because at that exact moment, the chapel doors slammed shut behind her. She turned. Officer Daniel Cross stood there. Her closest friend inside Sing Sing. The one person she trusted most. And in his hand was a gun. His voice was almost apologetic. I was hoping you'd never find that. The chapel felt smaller, with a gun pointed inside it. Rain hammered against the stained glass windows of Sing Sing, turning colored light into broken shadows across the floor. Rachel Monroe stood frozen near the confession room. Detective Reeves' flash drive clenched tightly in her hand. Officer Daniel Cross stood at the chapel doors. Gun raised. Face pale. Not angry. Worse. Guilty. Of all the people inside Sing Sing Correctional Facility, Daniel was the last person she expected. They had worked together for 6 years. Night shifts. Lockdowns. Riots. Quiet coffee breaks at 3 a.m. He knew her family. She trusted him enough to hand him her life without thinking. Now she understood how dangerous trust could be. Rachel's voice came out low. How long? Daniel looked down for half a second. Long enough. That's not an answer. He sighed. My father worked under Richard Hale. Same story as everyone else. Loyalty passed down like a family heirloom nobody wants, but everyone keeps. Rachel shook her head. So you protected this? Fake executions? Missing people? Reeves. His silence was answer enough. She stepped backward slowly. Is he alive? Daniel swallowed. Yes. That hit harder than the gun. Because hope was more dangerous than fear. Where? He was moved. Temporary holding. Old infirmary below the east wing. Alive. Michael Reeves was alive. Still somewhere inside the prison. Daniel's voice softened. Rachel, listen to me. Give me the drive. Walk away. You still can. She almost laughed. Walk away to what? Pretend this place isn't built on buried people. He looked exhausted. You think exposing this fixes it? It won't. It'll destroy careers, families. Good. That word cut the room in half. Daniel stared at her like he no longer recognized her. Maybe he didn't. Maybe the woman who trusted him had already disappeared. She held up the flash drive. This ends tonight. He raised the gun slightly. No, it disappears tonight. Before either of them moved, a voice echoed from the side chapel entrance. Funny. That's what they said in 1957. Warden Thomas Hale stepped from the shadows. Alone. Calm. Like a man attending a meeting. Not walking into betrayal. Daniel's expression changed instantly. Not relief. Fear. That told Rachel everything. Hale wasn't cleaning up mistakes. He was the mistake. The warden looked at Daniel first. You were supposed to handle this quietly. Daniel's hand trembled. She knows too much. Hale nodded. Yes. That tends to happen when people ask questions. Rachel stared at him. Where is Reeves? Hale adjusted his coat. Still alive. For now. I'm not my father, Officer Monroe. I don't enjoy cruelty. I prefer efficiency. She almost smiled. Men like you always rename cruelty. For the first time, Hale looked irritated. You think I created this? I inherited it. Institutions survive because someone is willing to make decisions decent people pretend not to see. Rachel answered immediately. No. Institutions survive because decent people stay silent. The chapel went still. Daniel shifted his aim between them. He was trapped now. Not loyal. Not free. Just late. Hale extended his hand. The drive. Rachel didn't move. Instead, she asked the question no one else had. Anthony DeLuca. Is he still alive? Hale's face gave away nothing. But Daniel did. A flicker. Tiny. Enough. Rachel understood. Somewhere, the ghost of 1957 was still breathing. And protecting that truth had destroyed everyone around it. She made her decision. She threw the flash drive. Not to Hale. Not to Daniel. Straight into the lit fireplace beside the altar. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then all three did. Hale lunged. Daniel shouted. Rachel grabbed the iron fire poker and blocked him. The chapel exploded into chaos. The gun fired. Glass shattered. Rain and cold air burst through broken stained glass. Daniel stumbled backward. Not shot. Startled. Hale crashed against the altar, trying to reach the burning drive. Too late. Plastic melted. Data died in flame. Years of secrets turning to smoke. Rachel stood breathing hard, rain mixing with ash. Hale stared into the fire like a man watching his own name disappear. Then he said quietly, "You have no idea what you've done." She answered, "For the first time tonight, I do." But then another voice came from the doorway. Weak, tired, alive. "You backed up the wrong file anyway." Everyone turned. Detective Michael Reeves stood there, bruised, thin, but alive, and smiling like a man who had spent too long waiting for the right moment. In his hand, another flash drive. The real one. Rachel nearly laughed from the shock. Reeves stepped inside. "I figured if someone kidnapped me, they'd probably search my pockets before my church donations." Even Daniel looked stunned. Hale's face finally cracked. Real fear. Not for prison. Not for scandal. For exposure. Because once truth had witnesses, it became harder to kill. Sirens echoed outside. Not prison alarms. Police. State investigators. External. Too many to control. Bennett had talked. Or Marcus from internal security had called it in. Either way, the walls were closing. Daniel lowered the gun first. A quiet surrender. He looked at Rachel. "I'm sorry." She believed he meant it. That made it worse. Hale stood very still. A man built on control, watching it leave him inch by inch. Reeves handed Rachel the real drive. "Your case now." She took it. Heavy, simple, powerful, like truth always was. The chapel doors opened. Investigators entered. No speeches. No dramatic arrests. Just procedure. Sometimes justice arrived wearing paperwork. Thomas Hale was led away without resistance. Daniel crossed too. Neither looked back. Because prisons teach one lesson better than any courtroom. Eventually, every locked door opens for someone. 6 months later, New York was still arguing over Sing Sing. Headlines. Hearings. Former officials denying everything. Families of disappeared inmates demanding answers. Old graves reopened. Old records challenged. Anthony DeLuca was finally confirmed dead years earlier. Hidden under another name in a private care facility funded by people who feared what he knew. Not immortal, just protected. The myth ended smaller than expected. Most myths do. Harold Bennett testified before he died. Quietly, honestly. The kind of confession history rarely gets. Detective Reeves returned to work. He hated attention, which made him trustworthy. Rachel left corrections. Some buildings stay inside you too long. She couldn't wear those walls forever. On her final day, she stood outside Sing Sing under a pale morning sky. The Hudson River moved quietly beside the prison, like it had seen all of it and judged nothing. A young reporter approached. "One last question, Officer Monroe. After everything, what scared you most? The lies or the people protecting them?" Rachel looked back at the prison, at the towers, at the windows, at all the places silence had lived. Then she answered, Neither. The reporter waited. She said, "What scared me most was how normal it all looked. Because evil rarely announces itself. Sometimes it wears a uniform. Sometimes it signs paperwork. Sometimes it smiles and asks if you're working late." She turned to leave. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. 5 words. "There's another file. Upstate. Rachel stopped walking. Some prisons hold prisoners. Others hold history. And history never stays buried forever." If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one.